Ha ha.
Feel the swords, feel the wars, fighting my blood down to the core. Warriors from medieval age, fear the reign of night brigades. Crusades into the room, moving through the temples and tombs. Scared and place, prepare to face Professor Awesome and the minions of doom. 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 Professor Awesome and the minions of doom.
So you might notice that the lighting looks a little bit different. It's darker on this side than normal, and that's because it's the middle of the night. It's the middle of the night because right now I'm on a deadline to get my grades in, and I have a lot of students who have used the grace period before turning in their final exams. So I've been hitting refresh, and grading them as quickly as they've been coming in. So, by the time that anyone's seeing this, no doubt they've all either passed, failed, or whatever their fate was. So to keep myself from going insane, I've decided to talk about something I've wanted to talk about for a little while now. And it's a series on Netflix called Kingdom and its relationship to really important Korean literature. So let me set up Kingdom. And there's going to be a very slight bit of spoilers in here, but basically everything I'm telling you is either directly shown or implied in the first, 5 minutes of the first episode. So it's a bit of a spoiler, but I wouldn't let that scare you away. It's Kingdom, not the kingdom, just Kingdom. And the idea of Kingdom is that there's a situation in Chosun Dynasty Korea. So think medieval to early modern Korea, basically. The exact year is not clear, but there's a problem where the king has only one son. He is an adult. He's an illegitimate son, but because he's his only son, he is the crown prince. So he will become the king after the king dies. Well, the king has a young wife who is of a rival political faction. Her family is, and she is very, very pregnant. She's 8-9 months pregnant, and the king, and so the king gets sick, and it's unclear whether the king is going to die or has died or not. And this is a big deal because if the king dies and she has not given birth yet, the crown prince, even though he's illegitimate, becomes the king. However, if she gives birth to a son before the king dies, then that child will become the heir. And so whether the king is alive or dead when this child is born is everything. And the crown prince is being kept out of the palace, so he doesn't know what's going on. Well, the king dies. And they have to figure out a way to hold on to power. And so they do what anyone would do in that situation. They turn the king into a zombie, which you see in the opening credits. So it sounds like I'm spoiling a big thing, but the opening credits literally are watching the king turn into a zombie. It will come as no shock to you that things go badly. A lot of drama occurs. But what's really interesting about Kingdom, I think, from the perspective of most audiences, is that it's a beautiful, beautiful period costume drama. The Korean television has lots of beautiful period costume dramas. And so there's, I think, a deep well that American audiences, even ones who don't want, even if they don't want things that are dubbed, I think that American production companies could go there and say like, hey, you guys got sets, you guys got costumes, and they've got them. Really beautiful. Just standard Korean television. They love those costume dramas. And so it's really beautiful. It's got this sort of, I want to say kung fu, but I don't want you to get the sense that this is, women fighting guys with swords with fans while they dance on treetops. Much more kind of down to earth, realistic medieval style fighting. It's got very interesting family and political drama going on. And of course, the backdrop to all this is a zombie apocalypse that we kind of know on the one hand can't become a global apocalypse because I guess this is not a spoiler for anyone who's not a time traveler. The world has not become engulfed in zombies ever since. So something's going to happen between the king becoming a zombie and all the bad things that happen and today that prevent that from happening. But for the characters that are involved there, they don't even know what a zombie is. Like, this is all new to them. And so it's, there are a lot of twists and turns, a lot of interesting political intrigue, a lot of interesting characters. So it's just really a good show. And I think everyone I know who's seen it really enjoyed it. But I want to take your enjoyment to another level because I want to tell you about a Korean folktale. It's not a folktale really, a Korean folk hero who has a story around him called Kiltong. Kiltong. And if you go like on Wikipedia and you see like, you look up the tale of Kiltong, it'll tell you, the novel, this is not a novel. It's not even a novella. It's really short. I would call it a short story. You have to have a very short attention span for you to consider it a novel. So if you're interested in the tale of Kiltong, please do read it. It's also set in the Chosun dynasty. Now, there's some question as to whether it was written at that time or written much later and set at that time. So I don't want to get into that. We will just not talk about the provenance of the story and just say that's when it is set. It's set during the Chosun dynasty, during the reign of King Sejong. Now, this is a different king than in Kingdom, for sure. King Sejong was a real king. He was the guy who really had a great political, cultural renaissance for Korea. He's kind of their King Arthur, but he's a real guy. He's on their money. He's the guy who invented the Korean style of writing. Legend has it that he did it personally. It's more likely he had a bunch of people do it for him. But by the way, little side note, Korean writing looks crazy hard. It is crazy easy. I often tell people I learned to read Korean in 2 days without trying hard. And I could teach someone to read Korean in an hour. Now, you won't know what the words mean, but you can sound out anything, and people say that's impossible. No, it isn't. It's a great, great alphabet. They even have a national holiday that is truly celebrated, not like Arbor Day in America, but truly celebrated about this alphabet. But we'll leave that aside. So, and the idea, and so it's set during the reign of King Sejong. So it's kind of like a lot of Arthurian legend where King Arthur is more of a setting. A lot of Arthurian legend has, and the knights of King Arthur said, "Hey, King Arthur, how you doing?" He said, "Hey," and then they go off and they have their adventure, and Arthur's barely in it, right? If you start thinking about the great Arthurian legends, you realize King Arthur doesn't really do much. He's just kind of the project manager or something. And in this, King Sejong he's kind of a background character. It's just the setting. It's roughly the same time period as Kingdom, though. I don't think we're supposed to believe that the dying king is King Sejong, or the zombie king is King Sejong. That if that's true, my apologies. I missed that. So what do we do? So what does the tale of Kiltong have to do with anything? Well, Kiltong is not an obscure character. So Kiltong is kind of the John Doe or John Q public name. So in Korea, it's such a well-known folktale that if you want to say, it's a placeholder name. So if you don't have the name of someone, you just call them Kiltong, right? John Doe, that kind of thing. So it's really well known, this tale. And the story is basically this. And it might sound real familiar to you after I've told you about this other. Kiltong he's not a prince, but he is the son of an important person, but he's the illegitimate son. This important person also has other grown, legitimate sons. But because he does not fit neatly into the Confucian ethical system, he cannot really call his father father and his brother brother, because he's outside the family, even though this is his father and this is his brother. And so essentially what happens in the story is he gets upset because he realizes he'll never fit in. He goes off and basically creates a Robin Hood kind of bandits that rob from the rich and give to the poor, and they have all sorts of adventures. But because he's creating so much trouble, his family tries to get him to turn himself in. There are a bunch of other things. Some magical, mystical things happen with like making these straw versions of himself. And eventually, in the end of the story, what happens with Hong Kiltong is he becomes a king himself of a neighboring kingdom, because he can't overthrow King Sejong because he's awesome, right? He becomes a king. And we're told about his children, and that he kind of, in the end, it doesn't matter which child, who the mother, his two wives, who the mother of the child is. He makes sure that they all have feudal lands and they're all taken care of, right? And there's this idea in the end that he has not just overcome, he's overcome to become a king, and he's overcome, and he's kind of passed that down to the next generation by being fair and just with them. And really what the tale of Hong Kiltong is about are the Confucian 5 relationships. So if you don't know anything about Confucian ethics, basically all society is governed around 5 relationships: the ruler to the minister, husband, wife, elder brother, younger brother, or elder sibling, younger sibling, right? Friend to friend. I'm forgetting one. It does matter, but we won't worry about that right now. Oh, parent to child, sorry. And that these are all society is based around this. And so Hong Kiltong is kept on the outside because of this. However, as it goes on, as the tale of Hong Kiltong goes on, you realize that there's something on the one hand very subversive happening throughout the tale, where he's kind of overcoming his position. But every time he's overcoming his position in some other way, he's reestablishing the Confucian 5 relationships. So when you get to the end, he's the king, and he's, meting out his lands to his children, and he has these 2 wives. So he's the father, he's the ruler. He has been the younger brother, or the brother before, but he is still kind of establishing these things. And so it acts not strictly, sometimes I think people read it strictly subversively, but I don't think it is. I think it's an interrogation of, what do we do with merit in this system? What do we do when someone clearly doesn't belong in the low position that they're in? And what's interesting about the tale of Hong Kiltong is you don't get that many people who are in a high position they don't deserve. It's more about a low position when you should be able to achieve a higher position. And so this is a really important tale in Korean culture, in Korean literature. It shouldn't be too hard to Google around and find yourself a copy of the tale of Hong Kiltong. And it's been made into movies, and like there was a Hong Kiltong Detective Agency TV series, I think it was, a few years ago. So it's, you got to be a little careful about what you're getting. So what does all this have to do with kingdom? Well, obviously, if you come from this culture, right, where this is one of the most famous stories, set at the same time, you have the illegitimate son whose position might be knocked out by this, and then knocked out by the birth of this child. And you have, throughout this, you have the problem of many people. A lot of the intrigue has to do with, if you're a servant, you've got one person telling you to do this and another person telling you to do that, and they are in opposition, but they're both your they're both in a higher position than you, in the Confucian social structure. And so you have to decide what to do. And we see every one of these Confucian relationships, right? Husband, wife, friend to friend, brother to brother, parent to child, and ruler to minister. Every one of those are played out in this story, in the Netflix series Kingdom. And so what I would recommend, if you haven't seen Kingdom, I recommend you watch it and just go ahead and enjoy it. But keep in mind, like, pay attention to the way that how these characters are often stuck between competing loyalties, and they're not sure what to do because their system is being threatened by what happens when the king is a zombie, essentially, right? Or actually, in the beginning, what happens when you don't know if the king is alive or dead? That's really the conflict at the beginning. So what happens if you don't know? How do you handle this? What happens? And we see this not just in the what happens at in the capital, but all throughout the country. We see again and again and again people come into these situations and they're trying to figure out where true loyalty lies and where they should have their true loyalty. And so even though I don't think there was a character named Hong Kiltong, if there was, I missed it. Even though Hong Kiltong is not a character in there is really no way that a Korean audience isn't going to look at this and say, like, we're playing with this idea of Hong Kiltong. And I think it would really help American audiences to see that. And if you've already seen Kingdom, you know how great it is. And I recommend that you watch it again, this time watching for the way that we have these tensions and the characters try to resolve them. Okay, so I've spent some time doing this and not grading essays. We'll see if some more have come in, and enjoy.